All right, good evening, everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the Planning Board and valued community representatives, I welcome you all to this evening's assembly of the Saco Planning Board. As chairman, it is my privilege to convene this gathering dedicated to the thoughtful planning and development of our community. Today, we come together with a shared commitment to shaping the future of our city in a manner that reflects our values, respects our heritage, and fulfills the needs of our residents both now and in the future. Our agenda tonight contains important matters, each requiring our careful consideration, expertise, and collaboration. As we engage in our deliberations, let us remember the profound impact these decisions will have on the lives of all, keeping in mind we're residents like you. It is our duty to maintain transparency, fairness, and inclusivity in our proceedings, ensuring that the voices of all are heard and respected. Together, we must embrace the responsibilities entrusted to us by our community, working diligently and thoughtfully to chart a course that fosters growth, prosperity, and harmony. And with that, I would like to call this meeting of the Tuesday, March 4th, 2025, Saco Planning Board to order. I look forward to the productive discussions and meaningful outcomes that lie ahead. With us this evening, we have myself, Matt Provenzel, the chair of the board, and to my left, Joyce Leary Clark, our vice chair, and Camille White, along with Carrie Lynn Lane and Jim Mollier. With us, we have planning staff members, Shannon Chisholm, Emily Cole Prescott, and our, what is, you have your new title, Lisa, and and Lisa, she does everything. Along with our Ward 5 City Council liaison, Phil Hatch. And with that, we have a quorum this evening, and we will continue. Our first item on the agenda this evening is our approval of our February 18th meeting minutes. Do any board members have any edits or comments to those minutes?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the February 18th meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce.
Second.
Second by Jim, thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
I'll abstain. I was absent.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. So 4 and 1 abstention. All right, our next item on the agenda this evening is our public comment period. This is an opportunity for any members of the public to come before the board and ask questions, bring up any items planning related. We'd like to keep this non-specific to any items on the agenda this evening. There'll be an opportunity to speak on those items at another time. So with that, if anyone is here and would like to address the board, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect comments and address them as appropriately.
Chelsea Hill, 108 Bradley Street. I've come up here a lot and talked about traffic, and I haven't been able to for a while because I've had other competing priorities, but this has been kind of like forming in the back of my mind for a while, and I see a lot of projects on the docket this year that involve traffic and traffic movement permits, and I just want to revisit the traffic movement permit process that we all went through over the last couple of years with another project that failed. And I want to introduce the analogy of traffic safety as stranded costs. So stranded costs are often referred to as when a business divests itself of a portion of its business and sells, the asset off to another organization. And the seller organization will typically have some residual costs that they aren't able to recoup in some form or fashion. If we use that analogy and we compare it to the community as the seller in the transaction, right? You guys are ushering decisions through the process where the community is making a choice to usually sacrifice or sell undeveloped or green space, which is an asset in the community, right? We're making that transaction choice. We're divesting ourselves of an asset, and we make that choice, and the open space goes away. And we see transaction after transaction that the sellers or the community are left with stranded costs related to traffic safety, namely biking and walking in our communities. We had 2 deaths in the last couple years and numerous instances of people being struck and injured. And we see diminished quality of life, congestion, pollution, crashes, and property damage. And the Federal Highway Administration quantifies this for us. It's $11 million for a fatality. I think what we're not doing right now when we're reviewing packets is accurately quantifying the financial impact of additional trip ends in our community and in our streets. An asset changes hands so many times. You know, the developer develops it, and then maybe it sells it to a property management firm. Maybe it sells it to individual owners, and then those owners are paying property taxes. And when you guys made your decision to allow the project to move forward, you were told you're going to get so many benefits, right? You're going to get more tax dollars, especially if it's, you know, off of city municipal services. You know, they're just going to be paying taxes, and you don't have to pay to maintain their water or anything, and it's going to be great. And they also are leveraging like a sense of urgency, and they're telling you that if you don't do this, you know, Saco's not going to be friendly to developers, and no one's going to want to move here, and no one's going to want to build here. But that narrative is peddled by people that are seeking to profit from the sense of urgency. People don't want to live in a community that they don't enjoy, that they can't walk downtown safely, that they can't send their kid down to the corner store to buy an ice cream cone because they don't feel safe letting them walk by themselves. What Saco actually isn't friendly to is lazy, uncreative developers. I was at a community meeting a while back for a project that's in your pipeline right now, and I was told there's no way that we could connect to a trail, to the Eastern Trail. It's impossible. No, we're not going to do that. And then a member of the planning department spoke up and said, mobility is really important. We want people to be connected. You know, you're very close to the trail. We need to look at if this is feasible. Well, there's a ravine. It can't be done. It's impossible. Like, there's a small hill. And that's uncreative, and that is not the kind of people that you want developing huge projects and adding lots of congestion and traffic safety issues to our community. And I would be glad and proud to live in a community that doesn't want that type of development. I want to live in a community that has developers that are dedicated to this place and want it to be nice for everyone to live in. I'm going to try and come up again and speak about specific projects, but I don't have a lot of time, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to. I'm also not sure that it's even on the agenda anymore this evening. But I just wanted to encourage the planning board to think about the long-term operational expenses. It took 2 years to get 4 stop signs that blink put up at an intersection that has been a high crash location since 2013. And 1 year of those 2 years were after a woman died at the intersection. Like, we can't even get 4 stop signs. Those are the kinds of decisions that are very important for you guys to think about as you're making decisions. People are dying in our streets, and like, we can't even get 4 blinking stop signs. So when you evaluate these projects and you see the impact and the benefits and you're sold a project, think about the long-term operational expenses that you're putting on us, because we're left with the stranded costs. We're the ones that have to scrounge around for couch pennies to get stop signs at intersections that are bigger or blinking. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will continue with our agenda this evening. Our next item are our planning board public hearing guidelines. This is a document that's available at the I guess, the rear of the auditorium here, available online. If anyone has any questions, please let us know and we can answer those. And then moving along, our next item are our applications for review this evening. And with that, we will begin with our first item. This is map 67, lot 27. This is Bradley Street Greens condominium. And this is a continued application review and public hearing for preliminary subdivision, site plan, and conditional use review for a multifamily residential project consisting of 16 duplex buildings for a total of 32 dwelling units and associated site improvements. And this is within the medium-density residential zoning district. Board members, any disclosures or conflicts on this item? Great. And with that, Emily, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight, you're looking at the public hearing for this application. We've included the dates when this application has been indicated before the board or been on the agenda. Peer reviews, some of them have been completed, some of them are underway. We've called out a few things here the board may want to look at, such as buffering, bicycle considerations, city engineer's review memo, some updates on some other items that you'll see in the comment response and hear from the applicant about as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. And with that, we have the applicant with us this evening, and you want to go ahead and...
Good evening. Hi, David Aronstam, 4 Baxter Lane, Saco, City View Construction. Actually, I'm really just here to say hello, introduce who we are again, come up and tell you a little bit about what we've been doing since the last time we were in front of the planning board. We've gone back and looked at our plan, worked with our engineering firm. We've focused primarily on a lot of the comments that were given during the review process, so we looked at that. And we also focused pretty heavily on the stormwater issue and how to handle that within the neighborhood that we're trying to build. And again, I think many of you were there on the site walk. So we're trying to build basically a cul-de-sac with 16 units, 16 duplexes on about 6¼ acres of land. So I'm here really just to say hello, introduce ourselves again to you, let you know what we've been doing, and then introduce Chris Taylor from Saco Techniques.
Thank you.
Good evening, board. Chris Taylor with Saco Techniques, professional engineer. Since the last time we were here in front of the board in January, we did submit revised plans. Those plans did keep the same layout, kind of configuration that you previously saw of the house, the road, the utilities. One little clarification is that there are 32 units. The change that we presented last time is that there's going to be 2 single-family units, so it's not 16 duplexes, it's 15, and then there's 2 single-family houses. Since the last time we were in front of the board, we responded to the landscape peer review comments, we responded to the city engineer's comments, and mostly that was focused on some specifics of how the stormwater gets calculated, how it gets routed. Worked with Joe, and you know, I think he's provided an updated comment since we've submitted. That should be in your packet. And so there's a couple of outstanding comments that we have or have received from Joe, and are going to work to address those with him. With that, I guess we're available for comments or questions that you have.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions or comments for the applicant at this time?
Mr. Chair, just a few, Chris. Some of these, I was trying to make sure I was looking at the most recent city engineer report or memo. There was some reference there, or perhaps it was with the fire department, a question about the size of the water main being 8 inches in diameter versus which they thought was a little too large for the site. Do you have, what are your thoughts on that, or has that already been changed?
That has been revised. We've reduced it down to 6-inch, and that's due to the fact that there's an existing hydrant basically across the street, across Bradley Street, so pretty easy access for them to get to. And without needing a hydrant on the site is what the fire department said. That water main can be reduced down to a 6-inch and supply the site adequately.
Thanks, that's very helpful. Another question had to do with the buffering. I think there was a fair amount of comments by the city engineer about the buffering, and perhaps you could explain a little better for us. The stormwater now is all intended to be addressed on site. Is that right?
That is correct, and it was, I guess it was always previously intended to be addressed on site. What you're probably remembering is that we had previously had a proposed piped connection to the adjacent development to convey that water off the site and get it into the public drainage system. At the last presentation was when we presented the revised design where there are surface stormwater basins in the form of an under-drain soil filter, 2 of them. And those will discharge near the property line, and the water will be conveyed over land at a similar point to where it's conveyed now, and kind of matching those rates at the different discharge points along the property. Part of the site goes out to Bradley Street. We've got stormwater infrastructure, treatment devices, basins up there to kind of mitigate and detain the additional runoff from the site and discharging to Bradley Street. Some of it goes to the east and gets conveyed to the existing development over there. So we're trying to, everything's kind of being contained on the site, treated, and then discharged as at the rates and locations that it does currently under the pre-development conditions.
So your your stormwater calculations show, excuse me, that the treatment that you're going to do on site for all the stormwater will cause the existing stormwater from that site, which sort of goes around the edge of the property, doesn't it? Following, I guess, the north side, and when we went on the sidewalk, there was a drainage area there, and then it sort of curves around the edge of the property towards Bradley Street, right? And some of that goes into the willows, but what you're doing now is whatever pre-existed on that northerly side will still exist in the same way it does currently, but everything on site will be treated on site or diverted off to a different location.
Yeah, that's correct. So there's that kind of depression in the trees in the northern corner of the site. That's maintaining, and all the flow that gets into there is getting basically diverted around the proposed development, around kind of along the property lines, and getting conveyed to where it leaves the site currently. And then we are, in the circle portion of the site, we're creating a catchment, so the whole developed area is draining towards the road and then into these under-drain soil filters to be treated and detained.
Right, and then finally, there was some questions about the buffering, and I think some folks at the Willows were concerned about that too. My memories, we went on the sidewalk, the brush was pretty thick adjacent to the Willows, and it wasn't clear to me from looking at the plans, are you proposing any additional buffering there other than what currently exists?
So we're proposing to maintain those arborvitaes that are along the property line. We're supplementing those along where that easement is between the two properties. There's a gap in the arborvitae there, so we are proposing to fill that in, and then we'd have the development from there.
That's great. Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jim. Any other board member thoughts, questions? Chris, those arborvitaes that you just mentioned for Jim's question there, it looks like there's 3 of them. How big are those going in? Because we've been out there, we've observed what the existing condition is of those, and I know graphically, we've got 3 large tree graphics here, but how big are those now? And I think that,
Yeah,
anyway, let's just start there.
so they are, those are actually proposed to be balsam fir trees, so a little bit different. It's still an evergreen tree, but a little bit different than the arborvitae. They do grow to be a little bit larger than the arborvitae, circumference-wise typically, and we've called them out to be 8 to 10 foot in height at planting time.
Okay. So in a 8 to 10 foot, what sort of circumference could we expect for something like that?
I have to apologize, I'm not the plant expert, but I do imagine that they would probably be at least 4 feet in diameter from there, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Jim?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, there's just one other question
Sure.
from the city engineer's memo. I'm not quite sure I understood what he was saying, but he was talking about a 3-inch high perimeter berm maintained in perpetuity to ensure surface runoff from the sub-watershed. And post-development condition is captured and conveyed into the stormwater as designed. So I looked in the plans, I didn't see where he was talking about.
Yep. There was a detail that was added that kind of shows it. It's really about the rear portion, the backyard portion of the houses, really, or what you'd call the backyard. The site is proposed to be elevated, and that's due to needing to elevate the site to get the stormwater to work properly, to get elevation, to get drainage areas and that sort of thing. So we're creating an elevated site, and along the edge of the backyard, what we're proposing is to have that be a little bit higher than the backyard itself, so that we're creating a containment, so that water doesn't run off, then that it gets directed either towards the front of the house, like around the sides and towards the front of the house, and gets into the road for the most part. But there's other situations along the eastern side of the property where that stays in the backyard and gets conveyed kind of directly to those underdrain soil filters. And I think that's what Joe is referencing there. And we did add a detail to the plan showing that kind of the edge before it slopes back down to existing grade is higher. That way it gets contained and doesn't run down the slope before and kind of bypass the underdrain soil filters. So.
And that 3-inch perimeter berm that he's talking about, which is that lip that you were describing, I mean, he's at least suggesting that might not be effective long-term, or it might not withstand, just normal wear and tear long-term. I mean, do you share any of those concerns?
The backyards are really intended to be pretty flat, and so having a shallow berm along the edge, I think the only thing that's really critical is that edge be higher than the backyard itself, and then it can get conveyed properly around. I think it just has to be something that we can add to the maintenance plan, the HOA documents, make sure that it's clear that is a function and intending, it's intentional, and that it's, required to make the stormwater kind of be conveyed correctly. So I think if we kind of follow up on those things, hopefully there's clarity and that it can be maintained going forward.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts from board members? Joyce?
I guess, well, no, I was wondering about the berm too, but it sounds like amending the HOA documents will take care of that, because it sounded like the whole point was making sure it was part of the maintenance plan. I think the only other question I had that hasn't been addressed would be, the question of internal sidewalks. It seems like that's been discussed. Yes,
Yeah.
no, what's the
Yeah,
current?
the sidewalks are included in the plan now. We've got it kind of going up the access road and around the loop.
Great, thanks.
Any other board member thoughts, questions, concerns? I'm just going through the rest of our list here in my list.
Mr. Chair, if it's appropriate, I think we're scheduled for a public hearing, so I'll move to open the public hearing.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Second by Carrie Lynn, thank you. Any additional discussion? Those in favor of opening the public hearing, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open a public hearing. If anyone is with us this evening to speak on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and we will collect comments and address them at the conclusion as appropriately.
Mr. Chair, see no member of the public coming to speak, but understanding that, I believe there are still a few items that need to be worked through with the city engineer. That will move to continue the public hearing until the next available date.
I'll second.
What would that date be?
It would be April 1st or March 18th. I think March 18th might be a little close to get everything reviewed, so April 1st.
April 1st? Then move to continue to April 1st. And Carolyn, your second still good?
Second still good.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. So, back to the board. We had a couple questions. Looks like there's a few outstanding items responding to the city engineer's memo. You received that, Chris, and you guys are working through that.
Yes.
You said, and then the city landscape peer reviewer is reviewing the applicant's comments as well. One of the items here we hadn't touched upon, board members, was the note about bicycle accommodations or a bike hitch or anything like that. I didn't know if board members had thoughts on that, and have you looked at a good location for that, Chris? Is there a potential spot, or have you done an exercise on that or anything?
So the intent with this development was to be very much like a traditional single-family house development, except that the buildings are attached kind of at the garage. Each unit has a garage. So our thought is that basically a bike rack isn't needed in this site. If someone's coming to this site, they're probably going to pull their bike up to either into the garage if they're living there, or next to the porch on the front porch, something like that. Put it on the property of whoever they're going to visit. If a bike rack becomes needed in the future, there's space next to either the parking spaces or the guest parking spaces or the mailbox, the community mailbox area. So it just seemed a little, with this type of development, it seemed a little odd to have a bike rack out there on kind of a private site where, you know, it seemed, you wouldn't really expect to have a bike rack on a single-family house lot road or something like that. So that was our thought with it, but, you know, that was just our intention.
Great, thank you, Chris. Board members, any thoughts? Joyce?
I agree with Chris. I think it makes sense if it was at a trailhead, something like that. But it's just a neighborhood of single families and duplexes, so I'm not aware of any other neighborhoods that would have bike racks. People can park in their own yards.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree as well.
Great, thank you. So, board members, any other direction or input for the applicant here? We mentioned briefly some of the buffering comments from the landscape architect. Any additional thoughts there?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would note the landscape architect seemed to have some concerns about potential damage to existing greenery, given the change in slopes on the property. So hopefully you're addressing that in your response.
One thought I had, Chris, or one confirmation was those are a type of arborvitae you mentioned at the easement area?
Yeah,
Is
balsam first, or, I
balsam
mean,
firs, okay.
kind of the classic Christmas tree.
Okay. Was creating a little bit of consistency in there. I know right now it's pretty dense in there. And understanding while the trees that are there are much more mature than the trees that you'll obviously be planting, but trying to, like I said, just create consistency in there. So if 3 meets the consistency, then I think that's okay. But if another one needs to be
Gotcha.
added, it looks visually, it looks like it need to be a little more dense, but that, I guess, was my only thought there. Any other thoughts from Board Jim?
There was just one I noticed from the folks at the Willows had a concern about the lighting from this site, and I assume all the lighting will be sort of like dark sky lighting that complies with the city's ordinances for minimizing glare and light up.
Yep, yeah, that is the intent. You know, they're pretty low fixtures for residential use. They're focused on lighting you know, we've got lights on the road, basically, to light the sidewalk and road, which is basically in the center of the site. The buildings kind of go around the roads for the most part, so they do create a pretty good buffer and screen for those lights as well. They're kind of focused downward, not an exposed bulb or something like that would shine in all directions. So.
That's great, thank you.
Any other thoughts from board members? All right, so I think there's a few items to tidy up on, Chris, and then it seems like April 1st works to continue public hearing and get some more information from you or clarifying information. Have we answered all of your questions?
Yes, I believe so.
So, Mr. Chair, if you need a motion to continue our review of this till April 1st, I so move.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Second by Carolyn, thank you. Any additional discussion to continue application review of this item to April 1st? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did we capture everything there, Emily? Just, I should have asked before, but.
I believe so, and they know the comment from Joe. That's just been an outstanding comment.
Great,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, continuing along here. Our next item on the agenda this evening is 9 Lund Road. This is map 69, lot 9, and this is to convert existing operations to medical marijuana dispensary. And this is presented by Thriving Wellness LLC. And this evening, this is an application of completeness review for conditional use and site plan review. And this is within the Business Industrial Zoning District. Shannon, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you. So, 9 Lund Road is currently functioning as a medical marijuana caregiver business. So at this location, they are currently engaging in cultivation and also have a small area where people who are patients can come and pick up medical marijuana from this location. So the big change here, and we've seen this with a couple of other applications, is that they are changing their state license from caregiver to medical marijuana dispensary. As part of that, they need to go through both the conditional use and site plan review process with the city as the way the ordinance is written. So 9 Lund currently is a developed site with a industrial building of approximately 13,308 square feet. Most of that building will be used for cultivation, but approximately 350 square feet of that building will be used to distribute medical marijuana to people who have the appropriate medical license to receive that treatment. So there are no changes to the building or the site that are proposed. The applicant has provided a number of different aerial photos of the site showing, where certain items are located, such as the dumpster and different parking areas. So they are here today. If you have any questions for them, I'm happy to answer any questions as well. If there's something that you saw during your review that you have questions on.
Great, thank you. And Shannon, there are a few waivers being requested, right?
Yes, so there are 3 waivers that are being requested for this application. One is a waiver to the boundary survey. The reasoning behind this is that no changes to the site are proposed and everything is currently on the site. Therefore, there's no worry about something landing on somebody else's property as part of this application. The other request was a waiver from a landscaping plan. They plan to keep all of the existing vegetation along the buffers the same, and there is a landscaped lawn out front of the building. And then they have requested a waiver from the lighting plan. They have submitted cut sheets for the lighting that has been put in place at the building. The new lighting that was put in place was done with working with the code enforcement department. So it was made to be dark sky compliant with the necessary shielding requested in our standards. So, and I reached out to the electrical inspector who works in the code enforcement department to just verify, and he said yes, that these are all dark sky compliant lights that have been placed on the building.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for Shannon? All right, and with that, if we have the applicant here, if they'd like to add to that or have a little brief presentation or anything, feel free.
Good evening. My name is Prima Daga. I'm the owner of Thriving Wellness. What Shannon just said, hi, is all accurate. It's an existing individual medical cannabis grow currently. I'm just seeking the city's approval so that I can continue the process to go through the state application process to become a medical dispensary and medical retail store.
All right, great, thank you.
If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions at this moment?
I think just confirming the traffic issues, is anything changing in terms of how many people are expected to use the facility on a daily or weekly basis?
So it's our current, it will be, we're currently in business, we're currently have pickup. By changing our licensure, that would not change.
Great, thank you. Any other board member thoughts? Camille?
Yes. Could you just explain or just differentiate the two different uses and how the business is transforming, just for our own knowledge? That would be great.
Sure. So you mean at the state level of the application process that I need to go through?
Correct, yes.
So in me seeking the city's approval to be able to have a medical dispensary and medical retail store, then the next step is to go and apply to the state to change my licensing. Currently, I'm an individual caregiver. By changing to a dispensary, that would allow me to have a medical dispensary retail store. Currently, the city of Saco does not have an individual caregiver retail store.
Thank you. Does that help you answer your question?
I'm just trying to understand kind of how the business is changing, if at all, from like a service standpoint.
The only thing that would be necessarily changing is that there would be a medical retail dispensary store.
Gotcha. Okay.
The existing cultivation would not be changing. It's the terminology used.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Jim?
So that sort of raised the question. For me, it looks like there's already an existing entrance there for members of the public to come in to, I guess.
It's a locked door,
Okay.
correct. So,
And so you'll be using that same door for the medical dispensary?
correct.
So nothing on the outside of the building changed? Will you be using any additional space inside the building for the medical dispensary?
No, it would just be that 300
50 square feet?
square feet. That picture that you see of that door, that goes into that entrance spot, which there's no structural changes inside or outside.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts or questions from board members? So, Emily?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I just want to make sure that we're using the words like matter here, and I know it's really not retail sales. I mean, there will be some sort of retail component. It's dispensary, it's medical dispensary sales is what this is going to be looked at as an accessory use to the registered, the medical marijuana registered dispensary. I just want to be clear, because we're not open to retail sales. So,
Yes.
sorry,
you.
thank you.
No, that's okay. I was going to bring it up, and in your memo, it's correct in what I thought I had read, this dispensary piece, not the retail sales. Because we've seen a few of these, and it's, the terminology is always strange, I think, to us, and that's why we always ask to refresh our memory and to make sure that it hasn't changed, because it does seem to change
It does.
quite often.
Yes.
So, okay. So, board members, why don't we tackle the waivers first? We can look at them as a whole or individually, whatever suits your fancy this evening.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I think since nothing on the outside of the building will be changing, it seems to me that all three waivers make perfect sense. I mean, the landscape waiver, the boundary survey, and particularly the lighting waiver makes sense because all the lighting has been changed to the type of lighting that we're looking for in the city, the dark sky compliant lighting. And it was done with the assistance of the code enforcement officer, so I think we can have confidence there. So I'm inclined to grant all three waivers. I don't know how other people feel, but I'll make a motion to that effect to grant all three waivers for this project. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I will second. I agree with Jim. There's nothing out exterior changing. There's no facade changing. Makes sense. So I'll second.
So, motion by Jim, second by Carrie Lynn, to grant the waivers as presented, given the information in the application. Any additional questions, thoughts, discussion? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes?
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to grant the waivers.
Mr. Chair, with those waivers granted, I looked at the application and it looks like everything is there that we need. So I believe the application's complete, and I'll move that we find the application complete.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes?
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. So with that, it looks like we have an opportunity for a April 1st public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to schedule a public hearing for April 1st.
I'll second.
Thank you, Joyce. Second by Carrie Lynn. Thank you. Any additional discussion on scheduling a public hearing on April 1st? All right, those in favor, Jim?
Yes?
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Anything else, Shannon, on this item, or does that wrap us up? I think we've captured everything.
Yeah, you've captured everything. If you had any questions that you wanted more information about prior to the public hearing, it might be a good time to mention them now. But if you think you have everything you need, then we can move on.
No, I think everything, the comments from staff and some of the notes here, I think that's fine. I don't have anything else to add. Sounds like board members are content as well. Great. We'll see you April 1st.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, continuing along. Our next item is 238 North Street. This is map 53, lot 138. And this is for the addition of 2 dwelling units to an existing mixed-use building. This evening, we have an application of completeness review for conditional use and site plan. This is within the medium-density residential zoning district. Anything else to add on this one, Shannon?
Yes, so just a little bit of background on 238 North Street. So the mixed-use building in question currently has a business out front and an addition out back. The addition out back has 2 existing one-bedroom apartments in it. The applicant through this application is requesting to add 2 more apartments within that existing addition. So this project also is not proposing any changes to the site. They're just creating these new units within the building that already exists and the square footage of the building that already exists on site. The applicant has submitted information regarding to the existing parking and also has provided a parking analysis showing that the parking there is sufficient to support the additional units. No landscaping is planned to be removed. There is a sidewalk both in front of 238 North Street and along the side of 238 North Street. 238 North Street is accessed via a private access drive with easement information that has been included in the packet regarding that access drive. And the applicants are here if you have any questions, and I'm also happy to provide any clarifications that you may wish for.
Thank you, Shannon. Any waivers on this one as well?
Yes, thank you. So these waivers are actually the same waivers that were requested with the last project. So there's a waiver to a boundary survey, a landscaping plan, and a lighting plan. So information relating to the existing conditions and landscaping have been submitted as part of the application. And there are no changes to lighting that are planned. All the existing lighting is on the building. There is some public comment regarding the lighting on the building. Previously, the lighting had not been turned on. You, of course, can ask me questions or the applicant questions about the lighting, but the lighting that was recently turned on is on the rear addition, and it shines out over the parking area because previously the parking area was not illuminated. So, yes.
Great, thank you, Shannon. Board members, any questions for Shannon at this time? And with that, we have the applicants. Are they with us this evening if they'd like to give a presentation or add anything to Shannon's memo here?
Hi, my name is Cindy Mioli. I'm own 238 North Street, as well as my husband Richard, my partner. Yeah, I don't know where to start, to be honest with you.
Well, let's start with, do you have anything to add to Shannon's memo or anything that you want to elaborate on?
Yeah, so as far as the lighting is concerned, we did purchase the building. We noticed that we're like, wow, it's awful dark. You could barely even see in front of you. So Then we found out that the electric hadn't been turned on in the back. So once we purchased the building and we had access to it, we got that going. And so it is lit up now. We do have the dark sky compliant lights that are on the building, which is required from the town. We had, I believe the gentleman's name is Marcel, and he's from the electrical inspection for the town, and he was there last week, walked around the building with us and told us it's exactly what is required from the town. So as far as the lighting, that's what is there for that. The existing landscaping is beautiful. It looks like it's all mostly matured, so we did not plan on touching any of that. It's a beautiful building. We're happy to be able to purchase it in such a great town, so is there anything?
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant at this moment? Jim?
I just have hi, I'm over here. I just have a couple questions for you about the lighting. I noticed it, I think it was in one of the responses that you might have made to neighbors who were complaining about the lighting. You indicated that some of the photographs would show the lighting on the building. And I'm looking at one right now that just shows, it looks like it's from the access easement, and it just shows the back portion of the building. And it looks like there's a light over the door on the stairway to the second floor. And it also looks like there's a light on one corner closest to the brick building there. I don't know if that, it looks like a light. I don't know if that's, if it is a light.
So the building that has the clapboard on it?
Yes.
Or the siding, that one, that's where the lights are. That's where all the parking is. So all the lights are adjacent to where the parking area is.
Okay.
For the safety of the tenants and the people that will be coming and going from the property.
No, that all makes sense. My question, though, is I'm not, I mean, I've just seen on some projects, the dark sky compliant lighting, and we're kind of getting to know what it looks like. And yes, I think someone just circled that little light on the corner. Is that light on the corner on the second floor, not the one by the door, but the other one? Is that a dark sky compliant light? Because it looks like that's one of those old-fashioned lights that just beams light out everywhere, not just on the parking lot.
You're talking about the one on the corner of the building?
Yes.
Nope, those are the dark sky compliant. So it's attached to the building, and so the light goes downwards. So if you're in
Okay.
the sky looking down, that's where it's looking. Dark sky compliant,
So
I
these,
believe.
can you see the image on the screen here? Are these the,
Yes, those are the ones.
so those fixtures that we see here are the fixtures installed?
Yes.
And so you use those lights to really light up the parking lot so it's safer for people
Yes.
parking in the back at night?
Yes.
Well, if the city has, I mean, our lighting expert isn't on the board tonight, Jeff Brochu, so I'm doing a poor attempt at trying to understand what he would know naturally. But if those are dark sky compliant and they actually meet the city's code requirements, then that's just fine. So it would seem to me, and under that circumstance, a lighting waiver would make sense. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts from board members? Camille?
In terms of the plans that were submitted, will there be additional plans just to clearly show the division of these units? Just by looking at them right now,
You just have the floor plan of them, is
just
that
the
correct?
floor plan, yeah.
So the rooms are already existing.
Oh, they are, okay.
They are, yes.
Okay.
Honestly, the only thing we would be doing is putting 2 kitchenettes in, one in each unit, that's it. They're all have their separate doors, they're all fire rated, we're all within compliance to all the rules and regulations for the town. We're just waiting for the approval to put the 2 efficiency kitchens in, and they're ready to go.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Camille. The lights that Jim asked about, those newly installed lights, or are those lights that have been on the building for?
They
a
are the
little bit
ones that
longer?
were on the building when we purchased it.
Okay. Could you touch upon the easement that we've read about here? Is there any clarity that you can add to that? There seems to be some question or uncertainty of how that easement relates to this particular project and the
Yep,
use.
to my knowledge, is that we have our right to be able to use it as far as vehicles and bicycles going across, which is the only intent for us, and that there is no cost or obligation other than that on our part. And it states that right in the deed. We don't plan on changing anything. We're going to continue to how it was proposed.
And as far as the specificity of the easement for the office use component, and we have a mixed use, we have office and residential. Any clarity there?
Since there are already 2 units in the building for residential, we don't have anything to add to that, because it already has 2 residential units along with the commercial.
Okay. Board members, any additional questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, I looked at that, and I saw the Robert Greenlaw survey plan showing the access easement, and it does say access easement to office building 238 North Street, but I don't see that as like a limiting factor that only people going to the office could use that access easement. I think the language in the deed is broad enough to demonstrate that whatever uses are on that piece of property, that they would have access for vehicles and pedestrians. I don't pretend to be a real estate lawyer even in my prior life, so Joyce has maybe more experience with that than I do, but that's just my take on it.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
I think this is similar to, we've had people raise issues in the past about whether a proposed use is consistent with a homeowners association, that sort of thing, and I think we were advised that it really wasn't our call to make, that we're not charged with interpreting legal language. I think that's a beyond our purview. Because, yeah, I mean, this is referencing a label on a plan set. Doesn't seem to be any more information beyond that.
Great, thank you, Joyce. Any other thoughts or questions? So similar to our past discussions, we can address these waivers entirely as a whole, or we can individualize them if you'd like. I don't know if board members have any other thoughts, questions, or concerns regarding those waivers.
Mr. Chair, it seems to me this is another good example of a project that isn't really changing. The boundary survey would not provide any additional information to anyone. The landscaping plan, it looks like all the landscaping is going to stay exactly the same. It's not changing. And if the lighting is not going to change either, then it would seem to me that granting waivers for all 3 would make perfect sense. So I'll move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for the motion. Excuse me. Thank you for that motion, Jim.
I will second.
A second by Carrie Lynn. Thank you. Any additional thoughts or discussion from board members on the motion? All right, those in favor of granting the waiver for boundary survey, landscape plan, and lighting plan. Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Any final thoughts on any of the application materials? Questions, concerns, discussion?
Mr. Chair, I believe that I've looked at the application checklist. It looks like with those waivers granted, the applicant has provided us with all the other information that we would need to determine the application's complete. So I'll move that we find the applications complete, and I'll go further, and I'll also move to schedule a public hearing on April 1st.
I'll second.
All right, motion by Jim and second by Joyce to find the application complete and schedule a public hearing for April 1st. Any additional discussion on that motion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Did we capture everything, Shannon?
Yes.
All right, great. We'll see you April 1st.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next item on this evening's agenda is 61 Cascade Road. This is map 48, lot 5, and map 48, lot 7. This is a preliminary subdivision proposal for a 3-lot subdivision. This is a application of completeness review this evening, and this is within the Portland Road zoning district. Anything else to add, Emily?
We are providing this to the board tonight because we're required to, per ordinance, providing that we have scheduling allows unless the applicant works with us on scheduling. So it's 188-402D. Really, it's supposed to be before you for application completeness review within 30 days. With that being said, there are a number of application completeness waivers that the applicant is looking for. This is what the applicant has identified. There are some other items that our city engineer, Adam Bliss, has pointed out in his review memo, which is in the after-the-fact meeting packet. We just received that yesterday. So there are a number of items. I think it's important to review each waiver carefully, go over how this is going to work and how this subdivision proposal interacts with the site plan application, understanding there are two different projects by two different applicants, but they are the same property that's involved. And then as far as, I know the board already completed its site walk for the athletic dome, so discussing whether or not you want to go back on site might be something to look at. There's several questions staff has. We were wondering also if you want us to get Conservation Commission comments. We recommend the board ask for those as well if you're asking for them on the athletic dome application. And then just considerations for subdivisions. These are commercial lots. I know we do a lot of more residential review in subdivisions, but we really need to understand how these lots will work, even if it's just a use that is proposed that may change in the future, because I'm not sure right now how these lots are gonna work and interact with traffic considerations and the like. There's some other things here, provisions, boundary question that remains, subdivision name block and lots, buffers is a question. Infrastructure specifications of Article 8 are a little bit different than site plan requirements, so those should be considered as well for each of the lots. And then pedestrian connectivity. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Board members, any questions for Emily at this time? All right, and with us we have an applicant. Anything to add or?
Yeah, so Silas Canavan with Atlantic Resource Consultants. I think first I need to apologize. I personally have not been too involved with this subdivision process. The engineer that was supposed to be here has not showed up. I haven't heard from him. I hope he's okay. But I work for the same company, and I will do my best to answer any questions that I can. I'm obviously familiar with the property because we're, doing the sporting complex. But I may not have every answer that you guys are looking for tonight in terms of this application, but I can certainly try my best, or I can make sure that we get you whatever answers you're looking for.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant at this time? Jim?
Well, just a few, Mr. Chair. So I'm looking at the subdivision checklist, and there are some items that have been checked off as, completed, and others where there's a lot of, please update or please provide. Do you expect that those could be provided and completed sometime in the very near future?
Yes, we will take a thorough review of the checklist and make sure that we provide everything that's necessary.
Yeah, because it doesn't, as of this moment, it doesn't look like we could vote on completeness because there's just so much data that needs to be done. The waivers, I can understand somewhat the waiver regarding parks and open space and recreation, but some of the other waivers, management of surface drainage waters and stuff, some of that is quite similar to what you're doing with the dome project, which is coming up. So it wouldn't seem to me that a waiver of those requirements would make sense because it would be something you'd need to do anyway vis-a-vis the other project, right?
So I think the intent, sorry if you're done.
Yes.
I think the intent of those waivers is because these are actually two separate applications. There's the subdivision, and then there's the sporting complex, which are two separate applications. The subdivision itself doesn't have any infrastructure development associated with it, so it's simply just dividing this property into 3 lots, and then anybody who purchases these lots and chooses to develop them will have to deal with all of the infrastructure improvements on their own at that time as they're going through site plan. So that's really the intention of the waivers, is that there's really there's no civil infrastructure proposed at this time. And as you can see, all the, well, I don't have a plan up to show you, but all the lots are getting their frontage from Cascade Road, so there's no new roads or anything that need to be built.
Thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts or questions from board members? Joyce?
Well, I agree with Jim. There are a lot of items on the application complete list, checklist that aren't checked off yet. One of the things I thought that could be addressed, of course, was water supply, erosion control. I'd certainly like to have more solid information about the boundaries of the property. I think that's a pretty significant issue. So I'm thinking I'm not inclined to find the application complete tonight. I think you have a good checklist of items to follow up on, including the city engineer's memo, which I realize is dated yesterday. So I understand why all of the issues in his memo haven't been addressed a day later.
Sure, understood. And can I just get some clarification on one, you said something about understanding the boundaries of the site. Are you talking about the little boundary discrepancy along the southerly property line? Is that the one
Right,
you're
I know
referring
there was some talk about a question about where exactly the boundaries were and
Yeah,
who the abutters are.
Yep, yeah, and that is in process. We have a third-party surveyor trying to sort all that out for us, and we will provide probably an updated boundary survey that shows, all of that information tied together.
Thank you, Joyce. I agree with my colleagues here. I think a lot of these items can be addressed. As far as some of the waivers, I think I'm not in a disagreement or opposed to some of these waivers. I think it's a little bit difficult not seeing the whole big picture with some of the other questions unanswered. So I'm just jumping on the first one, for example, the open space. Was there and I know, Silas, you weren't the engineer on this one, but perhaps sort of like a draft memo of all the pieces of this waiver. We're asking for this waiver because as part of this project, we're not looking to develop anything, and therefore open space will be addressed once the land is sold or whatever the case may be. Because as you've seen this evening, the board does support waivers in the right circumstances. So, yeah, I guess that's my thought here.
Yep, so you're looking just for a more detailed explanation of why these waivers are being asked for?
Yeah, so we can understand the whole. I know there's information here, but right now it seems like it's just 3 lots, and looking for, I guess, a little bit more on this. As Emily noticed or mentioned, there's the commercial aspect, the zone it's in, utilities. Joyce mentioned some of the ability to serve components. IF&W, I think there's some notes in here about wetlands, and I think there's a discrepancy between some of the time frames on some of them when they were done, and I think some of that additional information in there.
Okay. Yep. It sounds like a lot of that too is response to some of the items that the engineer brought up, right? So that response to comment will probably cover a lot of these things as well.
Yeah.
May I make a recommendation?
Yes.
Like I said earlier, I think what needs to happen is someone needs to pick a use for the other lot, even if it's just, it can be these 3 uses for commercial, and then show how it could work. You don't need to site plan the whole thing, but right now, like, we don't really have much to review, and then that would help you get to trip numbers, and it can change in the future under a site plan review, but we need to know that it works for something in that zone, I would think.
Sure, just a baseline, establishing a baseline
Yeah.
for something to start with.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other board member thoughts? So with that, Emily, would you recommend and like the board to include a date if the board wishes to continue application of completeness review to another date? Or would you like to choose a time that's satisfactory to
Yeah, I think
Staff.
probably we just want to make sure we get the comments and get them reviewed and then bring it back to you.
Okay.
So probably when the comments have been responded to.
Okay.
Plus April 1st is getting really busy.
And Mr. Chair, I'll just note that on the package that the application that was filed, pages 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18, or at least 17, do provide a list of the requested waivers and the reasons for them. But, I mean, taking Emily's suggestion at heart, you know, if there were some hypothetical uses for those lots, then perhaps some of those waivers wouldn't be necessary, and certainly make our job easier in terms of being able to focus on what it is that those lots could be used for. And so I want to appreciate those, that waivers were listed and explained, but I think it was so vague that I don't know if it would be helpful to us, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit out of context. There's
Right.
no
Right.
contextual component to it.
Sure, and we can certainly do that. I guess the only thing we will need to be careful of is that, you know, whatever uses we choose for the baseline are not locked in, and we can, we'll
Absolutely.
have the flexibility to change those if somebody comes along and wants to do something different.
Absolutely. It's happens.
Great.
Yes. Okay. Any other board member thoughts?
So if this application completeness review was continued to another date, what would be an appropriate date? I guess I'm asking the applicant because they have a lot of work to do.
I would have to get back to you on that, to be honest. I would need to talk to the right people and get you a better answer.
So just a general motion to continue application completeness review to the earliest available date that's for the developer. That's my motion.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce. Any additional discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to continue application of completeness review to a future date. Anything else to add, Emily, on that one?
I'm not at this time, however, I do recommend that we try to keep the review process in line. I know there are two different projects and two different applicants, but the subdivision application affects the athletic dome application. So they have to be reviewed together.
Yes. Thank you. All right, thank you. Moving on to our next item. Our next item is Cascade Road, and this is map 48, lot 5 and 6, and this is a proposal for an athletic sporting complex with an athletic dome and turf field with associated site improvements. This is a continued application of completeness review for site plan, conditional use, and site location of development. This is within the Portland Road zoning district and resource protection overlay. Anything to add on this one, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have provided the checklist for this one. You're looking at completeness review tonight. The applicant has updated the application. We received that February 27th, so right the day before we had to put the packets out. Purchase and sale agreement, we just recommend asking some questions on that. Traffic, there's a pretty good traffic consideration here that I'm a little concerned about. The applicant is asking for approval, I just want to highlight this. They're asking for approval of Phase 1, which is the athletic dome building, and Phase 2, which is the field. Phase 1 does not require a traffic movement permit. However, the field will require a traffic movement permit. So I'm not sure how the board could issue an approval for all phases without the traffic movement permit for phase 2. So that's something that I recommend that the application be revised to only include phase 1, which we've done with other applicants in the past, unless the applicant can obtain the traffic movement permit for phase 1 and phase 2. So that's something that's there, just to be consistent with other applications. We did that with the hotel application on North Street. We had asked the applicant to pare down their application so that they fit their traffic movement permit requirements. We've also asked Elliot to do it over in Park North, so he's doing preliminary with knowing that he'll have the traffic information by final, and he's limited to only the items that he has a permit for under final review. So just to be consistent. Septic system design, I still have a lot of questions on this specific item. We put here waiver requests. The applicant has requested a waiver to 230-8074. That's in the comment response materials. There's also a waiver later for lighting, a waiver request. And then the shoreline zoning application, we had asked for comment responses on Article 8 standards, which is our natural resources standards, and the applicant did email those to me. They'll be in the next meeting packet, so we do have some responses there to review next time you see this. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Any questions by board members for Emily at this time? And with that, I meant to do this. I had been in a good habit. Any board members, any disclosures or conflicts on this item? Okay, great. And additionally, we held a site walk this morning on this project. All the board members here, minus Carrie Lynn, were able to join us this morning and the applicant. So we walked the site. It was good. I think we learned a lot. We got to see a lot of the terrain, got to see some of the wetlands. The applicant was able to point out building corners, property lines, again, wetlands, a lot of the, the big picture items to this application we were able to see and observe out there, buffering. Anything else to add on that site walk, board members? Joyce?
I guess just the location of the proposed building and parking area is relevant relative to the stream that runs through the property.
Yep. Thank you. Jim?
And I mentioned this to the applicant at the site walk, but I thought that it was very well marked and it was very helpful to be able to see where the buildings would be or the field and parking, and so that was really well done and very helpful for the site walk today.
Mr. Chair, I'm seeing that there's quite a bit of, what do I want to say, negativity from the abutter. How much, since I wasn't on the site walk, how much of, can you see the residence or the campground from where the building will be sitting?
Yep.
Yeah, and actually one of the property owners, one of the abutters, Andrea Fatanides, was on the site walk this morning, which was helpful in terms of pointing out landmarks
Right.
on that property. And it's easy to see the property line because there's a barbed wire fence.
Oh, okay.
But I think it was helpful having her there because she could see what you were pointing out, and I think she provided some helpful information.
Yeah, so there's a lot of mature trees and mature growth out there, and given the winter, there's not a lot of low underlying brush. So it was a good site walk, so we could see and understand the lay of the land. That's why we do them. So great. And with that, Silas, why don't you go ahead and continue? I know we had we had our site walk this morning. We started conversation, your presentation at our last meeting. So if you want to pick up where you left off or kind of keep going and update? I think there was a little bit of some updated information and maybe some responses in there if you want to touch upon any of those, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
Sure, thank you. Again, for the record, Silas Canavan, Atlantic Resource Consultants, civil engineer for the project. I guess just first of all, a point of clarification on the traffic movement permit. What we're requesting is conditional approval of phase 2, not full approval. So it would be conditional upon receipt of the traffic movement permit from the main DOT, so they couldn't build phase 2 until they show the city that they have, indeed an approved traffic movement permit from DOT. Our thought behind that is that a main DOT traffic movement permit really wouldn't have any effect on the site itself. It potentially could have some impacts on, I don't know what they would be, that they could be like a turning lane or something like that coming into the site. Anything like that would have to come before the board again anyway for that specific thing, but it really wouldn't affect what's happening on the back of the site. So that's why, we were hoping we could get conditional approval for what's happening on the back of the site, and then, deal with a smaller portion of, if there happen to be any traffic improvements that are necessary for the DOT, those would be addressed at that time. But if there are no requirements from the DOT as a result of, the traffic movement permit, then things could continue as they are. So we're just trying to simplify the process, really, instead of having to do another full site plan review process, if it could be avoided. So that was our position on conditional approval of phase 2. For the site itself, I went into some detail last time. I'm guessing you guys probably don't want to hear everything all over again, especially since you were out there. A couple things we have followed up on. We've touched up our application. We made sure that all the boxes were checked and all that. I know that the septic design was a question. I did go into some detail about that last time. We have come to an agreement with, just reiterating, we've come to an agreement with DHHS, who is the ultimate authority on septic design in the state of Maine. And they've agreed on a flow rate for the septic system. It will be a relatively low wastewater generation site, and that's all based on real-world metered information that we got from other similar sites in New England. We actually got their water bills and understood exactly what they were using, and we've actually bumped that up significantly from what those water bills actually said they were using. So there's definitely a factor of safety associated with that as well. One thing I'd like to touch on is, one of the big questions here, I think, is, how does this building fit into the neighborhood? And see if I can get the slideshow going. So we've kind of done a sort of a site inventory of the surrounding area, and we just wanted to kind of share with the board what we think, why we think the building does actually fit. And we know it's different than some buildings that are out here, but we do still feel like it still kind of meets the general vibe of the neighborhood. So this Evolution Athletic Building is directly across the street on Cascade Road. It's a smaller building. It's 11,000 square feet. It's about 30 feet tall, estimated, just based on street view. Light gray in color. It has an recreational athletic use. There's little to no buffering on this site. You can see the footprint of that building right here. This is Cascade Road. I'm assuming you guys are able to see this. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is that building right there. If we keep going a little bit further away from the site, this is the Hancock Lumber Building. This building is about 30,000 square feet. It's about 35 feet high, again, estimating. Relatively low pitch, very light in color. Not a whole lot of architectural flair on this building. And there's also, above and beyond the one building here, there's a bunch of pole barn storage areas, storage sheds as well on that property. Again, that's right across the street. There also happens to be a very large lawn right in the front of this site, which is almost very similar to the size of the proposed outdoor athletic field on the sporting complex site. Moving down a little bit farther, heading a little north again, but just a little bit. The Package building, this was actually relatively recently built, 50,000 square feet, about 40 feet high. Again, primarily white in color, low-pitched roof. Again, relatively minimal architectural design features on this building as well. And then keep going north a little bit further. We've got Cloverleaf development. Now, these buildings are actually quite tall. They're about 43 feet tall. And there's numerous buildings. I think there's 11 or 12 buildings, but the cumulative footprint is about 36,000 square feet altogether. Again, everything is sort of that similar light, like white, light gray color as well. Again, not a whole lot of buffering from the street on this particular development. And then if we go a little bit further north, we've got the Ready Seafood building, obviously more of an industrial style building, but pretty substantial, about 65,000 square feet, about 30 feet tall. This one obviously flat roof and quite a bit of utility infrastructure going on top of the building as well. Again, similar in that light white, light gray color as a lot of the other buildings in the neighborhood. And then we get into kind of like the the more unique developments on within the neighborhood. Aquaboggan, obviously, quite a bit different. There aren't really any significant buildings associated with this, but as you look at it, you see a lot of sort of interesting landscape and and it's a unique recreational development. You don't really see this type of thing in most places as you're driving down the street. Similar thing with Funtown Splashdown, which is a little bit further south. Again, very unique, tall structures, that you can see from the road and abutting properties. Minimal buffering as well. And then I understand that this is not there anymore, but again, it just sort of, speaks to the unique nature of this neighborhood. The Monkey Trunks Gymnasium, that was, this is actually directly across the street from our site. Very unique look, obviously tall structure, very visible from a lot of different places. So again, we know this is not there anymore, but we just wanted to point out sort of the unique history of this neighborhood. So the sporting complex that we're proposing, we just like to point out some of the similarities that we have here. From a mass and bulk, it's a large, tall building similar to the Package building, the Ready Seafood building, and the Hancock Lumber building. Also similar to Cloverleaf in height and overall mass of all the buildings. Again, the color is very similar. We're proposing white for the fabric on the outside of the building. And most of the buildings around are white, light gray. From a use perspective, it'll be recreation athletic use at this facility, and the Evolution Athletics building, very similar use. It's a gym essentially. And then Aquaboggan and Funtown Splashdown recreational type of facilities. And then one thing I think that ties a lot of things together in this neighborhood is that there is some very unique visual aspects to it, especially with Aquaboggan, Funtown Splashdown, the former Monkey Trunks. And this building is obviously a different animal. It's not your typical stick-built, New England-style building. But it is the type of building that's really the only affordable way to build an indoor soccer arena, or soccer field, I should say. Just the span that's necessary for those. A traditional framed building, you'd have to be building a stadium essentially in order to really do that. So, it's our opinion that the building, although it's unique, it does actually fit into the neighborhood. So we did want to point that out. I know that was a question that came up last time. But other than that, I think, most of our application updates were really more kind of administrative stuff. So, but obviously, I know there's questions, and we'd be happy to answer any of them.
Great, thank you. Board members, any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair.
Carrie Lynn?
I think one of my biggest concerns, and it does touch with your next door neighbor, it is a campground. It's, she makes a lot of points that they have nighttime. They're quiet campground, as you can, I guess apparently nobody knew they were there for a little while. It says it was empty, but, what about, so it does fit into the neighborhood if you go north on Route 1, but it doesn't necessarily fit into the neighborhood if you go south on Route 1. And it can really damage an abutter. I don't know. I think the noise is going to cause issues for the abutter.
Thank you, Carrie Lynn. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? I guess given we've talked about this, I guess second time we've seen you silence site walk this morning, but I want to, Carrie Lynn brought up some noise questions, but I guess application of completeness, let's try to stay in that realm just for this evening because there's a lot. Any other board member questions, thoughts? Jim?
Well, the first one is the purchase and sale agreement still valid? I read through it and it looked like it expired on December 31st of 2024.
Yes, so my understanding is that it is still valid, and they've extended that multiple times, actually, throughout the course of this whole process, and it's written into what we submitted that, it can be extended multiple times up to a certain point, maybe June or something like that. And it is still valid, so, if we need more documentation of that, we can certainly provide it, but it is indeed valid.
Yeah, I mean, just the extension document would be, we don't need the dollar amounts or anything else in there, but just the extension document would be.
Sure, we can definitely provide that, and I think just for the sake of completion, I believe that the language in there actually, I think we went into that a little bit in the new application, and it does say that it is extended for a certain period of time.
Okay.
So I think it's in there for point of completeness, but yes, we will certainly provide an updated document.
And regarding the sewer capacity, I know the staff is pretty concerned about having septic systems so close to Cascade Brook and with the sewer not that far away. I think when you were here last, you mentioned it really is pretty far away. It's like 600 feet or further.
It's 600 feet as the crow flies, but you'd have to go directly under Cascade Brook with a sewer force main. The way that you would have to get there is over 1,000 feet, so you'd have to go out to Cascade Road and then up the road, which part of it would have to be in the right-of-way, so then you have the complication of a private force main and a public right-of-way. The complications of installing that, you still have to get over the bridge or the large culvert. That's so, yeah. The sewer connection is easily $80,000 to $100,000 to connect to sewer in this particular situation. And the ordinance is very clear. It says in the ordinance if your building is more than 200 feet away from a reasonable sewer connection, you can use septic. And this is a very low wastewater generating facility. One of Joe's colleagues who owns another one of these said it very well. He said, people come here to play sports. They don't come here to go to the bathroom. People are there for an hour mostly, and there's very low, there's not a huge spectator draw because it's youth sports and it's men's and women's leagues. It's amateur athletics. So, you know, people are not there for 3 or 4 hours, you know, watching like a professional sports event, and, you know, people aren't drinking alcohol, so that's like, you know, the additional, you know, use of the bathroom associated with that. So, you know, and our septic design meets all the standards. It's not in the shoreline zone. It's over 100 feet from the brook. And it meets all the DHHS standards for a septic system. So, you know, it's our opinion that, you know, despite if the staff wants it, and I can understand why they would ask for it, but it's just not practical in this situation.
That's all I have right this moment, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jim.
Can you just tell me, are there locker rooms?
I don't believe there are locker rooms. No locker rooms.
Any other thoughts from board members, questions for the applicant?
Just one minute, one
Yes,
more,
Jim.
Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. I was just looking through the application checklist form, and on this particular project, you're not asking for any waivers, right?
We are asking for a couple of waivers. Yeah, we brought those up last time.
Well, I'm sorry, lighting.
Lighting is one of them, yes. But the other one is the 1.5 to 1 slope versus 2 to 1 slope within the shoreline zone with a very short section of the access drive. We talked about it a little bit at the site walk today.
Yeah.
So the standard is maximum 2 to 1 slope for steepness. And, you know, we're proposing 1.5 to 1, which is a little bit steeper, just so that we can minimize, you know, impact to the buffer. You know, that's the only reason that we want to do it that way. And, you know, it's a perfectly safe alternative, and it'll be stabilized with the turf reinforcement matting. You know, so it'll be a very, very stable slope in the end. And it'll naturally be revegetated as well and never really mowed, you know. So we think it's reasonable in this case, and there's no practical alternative to, you know, just given the other wetlands on the site and how the building has to be oriented, given its size. It's really the only practical layout that we've come up with. We did look at a lot of other layouts on this site, but this is by far the layout that had the least amount of overall wetland impact and environmental impact on the site.
And with respect to the lighting waiver, I think you, I'm sorry, I'd forgotten about that earlier, but the lighting waiver, I think, you addressed the lighting waiver, I think, coming into the site off of Cascade Road, and the waiver made perfect sense there to me because you need to get into the site. Yeah, but I think there was also a comment about the lighting along that boundary line, where the fraternity's boundary line. And another reason the sidewalk was so helpful today was because you were able to show us that where that athletic field is going to be placed, it's actually going to be about 8 feet lower than the fraternity's property, so it'll be almost like sunken down, which would seem to be helpful to that neighbor. But I believe there's also some questions about lighting along that boundary too. And you had a fellow here last week or a couple weeks ago who was very quickly explained to us about the lighting. But after seeing the site, maybe you could help us understand the lighting next to that boundary. Are you going to be needing a waiver for that as well? Or do you think that the lighting you have planned along that boundary line would be sufficient so that it would meet Saco standards?
So it's a great question because it is a sort of unique situation. The Saco ordinance is interesting because athletic field lighting is actually exempt from most of the light spillage requirements, you know, like a typical site lighting and parking lighting layout would be. Really the only standard that it needs to meet is not producing nuisance glare onto your abutting properties. And, you know, unfortunately that's a very subjective thing. It's not, in talking with our lighting, our lighting specialist, who, as you said, is not here tonight, unfortunately, but, you know, you can measure glare, but, or candelas is what they use to measure glare, but there's no industry standard as to, like, you know, once you get to this level, it's a nuisance, and once you're below that level, it's not a nuisance. So unfortunately, you know, what somebody might consider to be nuisance, somebody else might not. But the interesting thing about the lights that are on that property line, so glare in itself, as it's defined, is only produced when you're actually looking at the actual source of the light. So if you can actually see the bulb, essentially, you know, that's considered glare. So in this situation, the only glare that we produce are actually the lights on the other side of the property, of the field, because those are the lights that are actually facing the field. The lights that are along the property line won't actually create any glare because they're shielded in the back and on the edges. So, you know, it's something that, you know, the board ultimately will have to make a decision as to whether they think that the glare produced from those lights is a nuisance or not. You know, it's our opinion that it won't be. And, you know, the campground is typically operational in the summertime when it's obviously light quite a bit later in the evening. And so the lights will be used quite a bit less, actually, in the summertime. And the facility is only going to operate till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. So it's not going to be very late into the evening with the light usage. So the reality is, at this time, I don't think we're asking for a waiver from the athletic lighting because it's just that glare aspect. And, you know, we'll leave it up to the board to decide if they believe that it's a nuisance or not. But you are correct about the entrance lighting. That one we are, because of the awkward property line that bows out. So yes, we are asking for a waiver from that standard.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts from board members? Questions?
Mr. Chair, I have a question when
Yes, Emily,
it's
please.
appropriate.
Yep, go ahead.
So I'm just curious how section 188-802A is being met per the city engineer's review memo from 61 Cascade Road application. It's in your after the fact packet. I realize that you just got this March 3rd and it's about the subdivision application, but all the lots we pulled into this subdivision, my understanding is the subdivision application is required to make the athletic dome facility work.
So I don't know.
To make sure
I don't
that
know
sale
exactly
happens. That's what we were told anyway, that the sale, in order to make sure the sale can happen legally, a subdivision application was necessary.
Right, so, and I apologize, I don't know exactly
Yeah.
the section language that you're referring to, but basically, they have a purchase and sale agreement for, I believe it's called Lot C, within that subdivision that's proposed. And so this project would be, you know, either approved at the same time or conditional upon the approval of that subdivision.
Okay, so then the question that I just have for the board is, and for the applicant, is how is section 188-802A of the subdivision ordinance being met?
I don't know what the language in this.
Yeah, and I know you're not, you know, I don't want to get in back and forth, but that's my question relative to how we're reviewing this application tonight, as well as how we're reviewing traffic relative to the subdivision and this application. So as I have to bring these up in good conscience as a staff person for this board, because I don't want to deal with the problems afterward.
Yeah, of course, thank you.
I mean, if somebody could read the language, I maybe can weigh in on it. I just don't know exactly what that section says.
Sure, I can pull it up for you here for a second. So 188. I'm not nearly as quick as Emily is on
I
this
have
stuff.
it, Matt, if you don't, it's in the after the fact packet.
Sure, that's what I was going to triple check, that it was the same verbiage in there. Yeah, so section 188-802 is reference to wastewater. It states a public system, a sanitary sewer system shall be installed at the expense of the applicant. This requirement shall not be waived for subdivisions within 1,500 feet of an existing sewer line if the city agencies certify that the extension will not be a burden on the system. So that's the section that Emily is referring to. This section, we have had the question very recently, and it is, I'm trying to think of the exact verbiage in that particular case, Emily, but there was, a waiver was requested, but we had clarity that the applicant or the board cannot waive that. And there was a specific standard, or there's something specific about that application that it's escaping me at this very moment. But that's the section that Emily's referring to here, 188-802A, wastewater, and that's where it addressed the sewer within 1,500 feet for subdivisions. Yeah, so that's the question. Any other thoughts from board members or questions? Regarding the slope, I guess, I'm trying to find opinion from Adam on that, Emily, and I thought I had read something on it. Am I mistaken? Do you know? Has Adam weighed in on that waiver?
I can look back and just see if he's weighed in, but I know that one of our peer reviewers weighed in on it because they wanted to make sure it was flagged for your review. And then they responded back and said, like, it's now captured under the waiver because there's a waiver request. Like, the comment is captured. But I can look back and see if we have anything from Adam or Joe.
So I have the comments from, your notes here about that waiver, Silas. I thought there was another piece to it. Because I guess where I'm going with it is I want to understand from the city engineer's standpoint, because he had a comment asking about snow storage and concern about snow storage going down the embankment and into that 75-foot setback. Silas, you responded. It doesn't particularly reference that waiver, but I suspect that question, that's all on the same answer, that same area under discussion, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
No, that's okay. So I guess just understanding the steepness of the slope, the snow, how it's controlled or can be controlled in that area, the steepness of the slope, stability, impact, all of those questions. I guess that's sort of my question there. I know you removed it, and then the next question and comment, you removed it from the wetland area with signage. So just sort of circling back and tying all that back together, understanding the risks, if any, impacts. That's all.
So are you asking for clarification on that, or are you just trying to understand how that relates to their comment?
Yes.
So, so we can talk about the slope. So let's start with the slope. So whether the slope is 2-to-1, which is the ordinance standard,
right,
or 1.5-to-1, it's a steep slope either way. So
sure.
Snow, and we're just talking about snow that as the plow goes by, it's going to be pushed up and over and under the guardrail. It's a wooden guardrail with one beam across of it. Snow's just going to fall down that slope. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. And so that's why we put, and it doesn't make sense to not try to put a windrow there. It just seems unreasonable. We're not proposing that as being a snow dump area where they take snow from other parts of the site and put it in. along that bank. I could understand why that would be, unfavorable. But this is just the area that snow will land when the plow goes through. I mean, it's just like any other road, it's gonna go to the side of the road, and because it happens to be a steep bank, it's gonna tumble down and end up in that area. In terms of the wetland in the center, we did remove, that snow storage area. We could put signage up, we could put a little bit of fence around that if we needed to, whatever the board is comfortable with. We understand that, they don't want to impact the wetland with, grit and stuff from, the snow ending up in the wetland. So, all the stormwater drains away from that wetland. So it's not, there's not runoff going into that wetland from the parking lot. So, it's really just a matter of putting that snow somewhere else. And we did clear we provided a little clearing in the back corner of that part of the parking lot for additional snow. So since we're not going to put it in the center, we'll put it on the edge.
That center wetland area, does that have a curb?
Does not have a curb.
No curb. But it all slopes away, all the pavement slopes away to the catch basin?
Yes. Yeah, there's really no need for a curb. A curb doesn't really provide any benefit there.
Any other thoughts from board members? Back to my list here. So speaking, we're still in the snow storage, so that was one of the comments. You have snow storage area there. We talked about it while we were on site, snow storage for clearing the athletic field in the shoulder season as necessary. So I guess we'll have to, so I don't ask a redundant question. Do you have the plan open? Can we? So the snow storage on that bank, that note will come out. Is that what you're saying? Hopefully the plan I'm not looking at is old.
Sorry, let me get back to this. There it goes.
Yeah, so I'm on that page.
You were talking about, is it this sheet?
Yeah, so your plan doesn't have the note.
I'm just trying to find where we put snow storage on which plan. We had it on there. Huh, that's odd. Well, I guess it depends. We can take the note off if you want to and not indicate that as a snow storage area.
Well, so I have C200 and
Oh, okay, yeah, I don't have that in my, yeah, let me pull that one up.
C200 shows along that guardrail and along that bank, snow storage.
Yes, and again,
that's why I brought it up with the bank and then the comments.
And again, the only intention of that was for snow that's pushed off by the plow as it does its path into the site. Again, was not intended for
Sure.
to be a snow dump. So we can revise that note. We can not call that area a snow storage area if you like. We can say, snow should not be removed from one portion of the site and placed in this area. Whatever you guys are comfortable with is fine.
I think similar verbiage for the wetland sign, I think would be fine. I think we've done that in the past. I guess everything that we can do to sort of, it's going to sound like, yeah, that note there.
Yep.
It's going to sound like belt and suspenders, and I know it's hard. There are events where there's a lot of snow, but make sure we communicate the overall intent and design here. So.
Yep, that's no problem. We can put a footnote on that leader note and reference a more detailed note that says what can and cannot go there.
Sure. So, not to get distracted here a little bit. So we have a couple waivers to address. one. Emily's comment and question on 188-802A. And we have existing sidewalk considerations for extending. Talked about the lighting. We talked about a generator while we were on site. I think that's been clear. There's a generator, Carrie Lynn. The dome has fans that help keep it inflated. Backup fan, backup system, backup generator. In a catastrophic event, and Silas, not to use your words, but if there's no power, then the dome, it takes a couple hours for the dome to deflate. It's not an instantaneous collapse or anything like that. So that was a discussion we had on site. We talked about the boundary, Silas. You were working on that. You had another surveyor out there to verify some points and some lines. I guess, board members, we talked about design guidelines a little bit, and Silas gave us a presentation there. Any thoughts or comments there as far as the dome here and the overall project meeting the design guidelines?
Well, Mr. Chair, it certainly seems this is a very different sort of building, and a lot of our design guidelines don't really address buildings of this sort. The entry building that's going to be associated with this dome looks like it would certainly meet our design criteria. So I'm not quite sure if we should be, I'm not quite sure how to apply our design criteria to a dome-related building. So, I don't know what to do with that. But I don't know that that should necessarily be an impediment simply because it's a different sort of structure. I mean, I think our design requirements in the ordinance, if I'm understanding them correctly, are to make sure that the buildings are, that there's something unique and interesting about the building, and so each building has a little pizzazz associated with it, so it doesn't look like some monolithic structures. This structure is going to be unique enough in and of itself that I don't know that we really need to apply that design criteria in the way we would a normal building.
Would you mind if I responded to or added to that as well?
Sure. I guess real quick, I guess my overall intent here for discussion is to, if necessary and as necessary, to make sure we provide the applicant the best feedback we can as to what we're looking at. As far as I know where I said we were going to stay within the application completeness confines here, and here I am stretching it a little bit, but just to make sure that the applicant has the correct feedback from us is my goal with the question, but go ahead, Silas.
So I was just going to point out, one of the very, and I don't have the exact language right in front of me right now, but one of the very first sections of the design standards says these standards must be met to the extent practical. And then I think it goes on to say something of the effect of that if they cannot be met to the T, you need to provide a reasonable explanation why. And, I believe that we have done that. This is just a building that doesn't fit into that category necessarily. And, we've tried to meet them to the extent practical with the entrance building. And potentially there's things we could do if the board wanted, like, putting graphics or something on the side of the building to some degree. There is some, lettering proposed for, potentially like a sponsor or something like that. But, I think that to the extent practical is very important language in this particular case.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts from board members?
I guess one thing I thought about, and it's hard to tell in the winter because we don't see any underbrush, but I like the idea of having some additional buffering at the back property line. It seemed that the building and the parking lot were quite close to this campground, and the picnic tables and campsites are right on the other side of the fence. And we know they've been there quite a while. I think that would, adding something, some buffering that shields each of the uses from the other would be helpful. I don't know about a fence. That's a pretty long, how long is the property line here?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I would lean more toward evergreens rather than fences.
Yeah. Yeah, we can make that a little bit more of a robust buffer along that edge. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I think, as Carrie Lynn pointed out earlier, there's certainly going to be some, youth sports, there's going to be some noise.
Yep. No, I think it was good that we saw it out there this time of year too, because, we've been out there earlier in the season and it was quite a bit more dense. Yeah, so, but understood.
Camille?
I don't know if this is overextension of the application completeness review, but I just want to flag this for the applicant. And there have been issued some concerns actually in the most recent submission, just regarding the structure itself and how it might be impacted by weather here in Maine. So, and something that I had a bit of a concern around as well, essentially the bubble popping. It has happened recently, I know, at the Woodlands up in Falmouth. In the most recent submission, there was, I believe, UMaine Mahoney Dome collapses in 2023. So just understanding more about kind of the maintenance program and to avoid that from it happening, because I can see it being fairly detrimental to the owner and essentially, redoing the project all over again. So just wanted to flag that for your considerations.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, questions from board members?
Mr. Chair, just to follow up on something the city planner mentioned with the, having this project done in 2 phases, and the applicant had countered with, well, we could do like a conditional approval of phase 2, so that they don't have to come back for, that review. So that phase 2, if this was all considered one project rather than in phases, any approval associated with the field would, be suspended until a traffic movement permit were granted and all the conditions associated with it were met. I'm just curious as to whether or not something like that would be satisfactory to the city staff, or would that address the concern?
So Mr. Chair, if I may.
Sure.
My primary concern on that is it's not consistent with what we've told other people, which is revise your application. Like we had the indoor water park and the 139-room hotel was one of the more recent ones we did, and I told them to revise their application down to a 130-room hotel because that's all that they could do without needing a TMP. And then the other one, the other concern I have, certainly want to work with everyone as much as we can, but I don't have any, I don't have a building permit necessarily that the athletic field is going to trigger. So there's going to be no way in our systems that we have now, for me to say, okay, wait, we won't issue that permit until you're ready to go because it's a field. So I will have no trigger to do that. So I'm not sure, and I'm not sure DOT is going to go enforce this. I think it'll be on the city as it's been on other DOT projects for us to kind of get in the middle of enforcement. As far as my experience has been here for 6 years with the city, or about 6 years with the city. So those are my concerns, just logistically and from a city staff perspective, and that's why I say I got to bring these up so you you know what I'm thinking down the road. We will have problems with this if it's approved as one whole project. And even if you put conditions on it, phase 1, phase 2, you will be giving them some rights, some development rights to phase 2.
Thank you, Emily.
Could I respond to that?
Sure, hold on one moment, Silas. Additionally, Emily's right, that's where we've been. I'm not in support of it, I'm not sure how Joyce feels, but we've done it in the past on one project, and we are going on roughly 7 years, I think, waiting for the work to be done to mitigate the traffic, and the site has been built out, and the owners of the site are working on mitigating and controlling programs and quantities and people. So we've had quarterly reports. We've been trying to get quarterly reports from traffic engineer to keep track of traffic counts, and it's been ongoing for 7 years. So it hasn't been successful in our experience here. So I'm not. So there's just that to add to Emily's comments there, but that's.
Well, that's very helpful. I didn't appreciate all the history, and those are very good reasons to, suggest that this really be done in 2 phases. Is that something the applicant would be comfortable with? Because it certainly, understanding the bigger picture as I do now, it would seem like a reasonable request to make the applicant to just separate this into 2 phases.
And I appreciate the question from the applicant. I understand the request, of course, but anyway, go. Do you have anything to add real quick?
No, I think you're exactly right. And to Emily's point, consistency in how we treat applicants is certainly critical. And, the fact is you have everything all planned here. You have the space set aside. I don't think it would be terribly difficult when the TMP is completed to come back with phase 2. It's already part of your plans. But yeah, as opposed to a conditional approval, it's difficult for us to track.
Could I
Yes,
just
please,
respond?
go ahead.
Okay.
Yep.
I guess just my final rebuttal to that. So these are two, actually, as you mentioned, these are 2 very distinct pieces. I don't know the history of the other projects you guys are talking about, and I don't know how they were intertwined with each other. But the field is almost, it is an almost separate thing, and we have a phasing plan in the last submission that very clearly breaks up, the field from the dome and the parking lot. And the reality is, the client would be breaking the law, state law, not just the rules of the city of Saco, if they were to go ahead and build that without getting a permit from the Maine DOT, and then the state would enforce their jurisdiction on that as well. So there could very easily be put notes on the plan that says this cannot be constructed until the city has a copy of the approved traffic movement permit. In my opinion, it's not really that much different than, I would assume from time to time you guys approve projects before like a NERPA permit perhaps is, fully approved by the Maine DEP. It's the similar type of thing that we're asking for here, just a conditional approval that very clear on the plans that you cannot move forward with that work until the city has the permit in hand. So that's where we're at with it. And that's what we were hoping would be agreeable.
All right, thank you. So, board members, any more thoughts? So we have a couple waivers on the table, couple items here. How would the board like to proceed? So we, again, in discussion that we had started, we have the subdivision as well as part of this all-encompassing property here. Any thoughts or wishes on how the board would like to proceed here? So, a few items, information, responses. Would the board like to address waivers now and look for more information? I think we've done that in the past. We've sort of done both ways, meaning we've gone ahead where we've felt appropriate to grant waivers and ask for more information on the application. We've said, hey, this waiver's okay, but we need more on X, Y, and Z. I think we've also had instances where we've held and waited for everything and then made sort of a final determination, but we've also given the application or the applicant direction that, hey, we do feel comfortable on the waiver. We're not going to move on it this evening, but we do feel comfortable with it pending all this other information. But that's sort of maybe the two courses of action that we've done historically.
Mr. Chair, I don't remember seeing any issues raised about the applicant's request for the waiver, and I may have missed it. The waiver associated with the 1.5 to 1 slope. I don't recall seeing concerns raised about that by any of the staff. And if that's true, then it would seem to me that waiver would make sense for this particular lot because they're trying to protect as much of that Cascade Brook watershed as possible, and if these slopes are protected the way that the applicant's describing, it would seem to fit. With regard to the lighting waiver, as I understand, the lighting waiver only deals with the lighting associated with sort of the entry road from Cascade Road entering into the facility, and it would seem that would also seem to make sense. Because otherwise it's a pretty dark area, and it wouldn't appear that it would adversely affect neighbors. So I'd be inclined to grant those two waivers now. I think there are some other issues we need to deal with application of completeness, but I think with respect to those waivers, I think they would be justified.
Mr. Chair, I would just recommend getting city engineer opinion too, because I don't see that we have that. You would ask me to look into that.
Okay, thank
I don't
you.
see that we have follow-up from him on that.
All right, that was going to be my discussion and see if you had a chance to look at that one yet. Are we just a discussion topic right this second, not an official motion? Okay. Any other thoughts from board members on those two waivers? Sort of.
I completely agree with
Unofficially.
Jim on both of those. As far as the slope, it seems like it's a reasonable trade-off to avoid encroaching on the brook any further. And as far as the lighting is concerned, if we're talking about just the entrance area, we're talking about safety. And given what's in the surrounding area, what's across the road, it's not going to create any sort of encroachment or light trespass on other properties. So I would be inclined to be in favor of both of those waivers also.
All right, thank you, Joyce. Any other board member thoughts? I agree with everyone as well. I also agree with Emily. I'd like to get an official input from the city engineer on that. But I think those are reasonable, exactly for the way, your explanation, Joyce, on the lighting. Lighting on the field as well, if we kind of circle back on that for a moment. We've had that explanation, you had that presentation at our last meeting. I think that was clear to me. I think the technology in those lights are, it grows every day. In it being a special event, it's not all the time. It's an event we talked about 9 or 10 o'clock or so. Maybe 9, I think 9 o'clock on the outdoor field, 10 o'clock on the indoor items. So I don't have any concerns with those lights. I think it's one of those things as well. I think, especially at Thornton Academy, when you see the lights are on, I think everyone gets excited that something's happening. Kids are having fun. So I think there's sort of that level of interest and excitement, I think. So and again, it's a temporary thing. So I don't have any concerns there, but, so, yeah, Joyce.
I'm looking at the lighting, the peer review by Craig Burgess regarding the athletic field. And he was recommending the applicant provide an analysis demonstrating glare doesn't extend beyond the property lines. Because it did appear there was going to be some light spillover onto the abutter. So, you know, personally, I'd like to see some more information about that. I mean, it looks like they're extending straight down as far as the lighting is aiming straight down. And I know we had some visuals at the last meeting about the darkness around the edges, but, you know, if that could be quantified. That's why we need Jeff here, because
Sure.
then Jeff could look at the lighting plan.
Sure. So circling back, it seems like we're generally content, no major concerns with that light, but just getting that comment from the peer reviewer addressed. I think that's what you're getting at.
Yeah, and you know, some additional buffering might help with that also.
Sure. Overall buffering. Yep, I agree. So in the sense of those waivers and those items there, we're sort of directing the applicant, if you will. Are we in agreement that that's sort of our, I guess, one item, the slope, we're asking Emily to see if we can get some additional input on that 1 to 5 slope, that reduction from city engineer. But overall, the board seems to be in support of those waivers. Yes?
And as far as the lighting waiver is concerned, the applicant's not looking for a lighting waiver associated with the field, just for the entrance.
Yes.
So,
Correct.
I mean, the applicant's prepared to make sure that any field lighting, you know, meets city requirements. So there's no waiver required there.
No waiver required. I think the peer reviewer is looking for just a little bit of additional information on light spillage.
Yes.
He does say glare. The applicant has talked about glare with us, but I think if the comment has a response to it, I think we can go from there and address it. It's field lighting, so I understand it's not a regular parking light pole, so.
I mean,
Any other-
Mr.
Go
Chair, would it make sense for us to, if members of the board feel this way, to grant the lighting waiver for the entrance to the project, you know, limit the lighting waiver to that? But then, so we could perhaps grant that tonight, but with respect to the slope, even though I'm inclined to agree to the waiver, if the city engineer were to come back and say absolutely not for X, Y, and Z reasons, I would feel terrible if we granted a waiver contrary to his good advice. So, Mr. Chair, I'll move to grant the lighting waiver for the entrance to the property as requested by the applicant.
All right, thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Motion by Jim, second by Joyce. Any additional discussion on that item? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to grant the lighting waiver for the entry. So with that, Emily, have we captured, did we capture all the items? We didn't really go in a particular order, so we have, I guess let's start with, if we could, is there a particular date that we could see the applicant here and continue? Or would you prefer once application materials have been received and responded to?
I think that's probably the better way to go, and we'll
Okay.
try to put it on April 1st if that's a possibility.
Okay.
Well, like I said, it's getting pretty packed.
Okay. So I think we've captured everything, Silas. That big one now is section 188-802 in reference to subdivision, that component.
Can I ask
Addressing
one more
that.
question about that, though?
Sure.
That's a standard related to subdivision,
Correct.
but this is a site plan review application. So I can understand that that standard applies to the subdivision application, but this is not an application for a subdivision. So those standards aren't necessarily applicable to this particular project. I can understand that they are, and I'm just trying to, in terms of completeness, to keep this project moving. You know, if the subdivision application piece requires it, you know, we'd have to change something. But this is a site plan application, not a subdivision application. So I don't know if that changes anything.
Correct. So, Emily, can you maybe explain that better than me? So the way that I understand that this site plan can't happen without the subdivision being complete, right? Is that how I understand it? So
I
that,
mean, that's our understanding as staff. That's what we were told, is the subdivision was necessary to move forward with this proposal so that the sale could happen for this proposal.
okay,
That's the info that we have.
okay.
So the consideration that I have is if we're designing something now for this lot, and we know the subdivision is coming up, then the lot is gonna fall under 188-802A. And I know the board cannot waive that just because it came up recently.
Right. So trying to ask the correct question. So this is site plan, but regardless of how the board votes on it, it can't, if the board were to find the project meets the requirements and provides an approval without subdivision, it still can't happen. Is that,
Unless there's something different going on with the property out there
okay,
that would make it not necessary.
okay,
But as far as we know, the subdivision was required and it was something that got flagged. I don't know I'm not sure how it got flagged, but it got flagged through something with sales.
okay,
And it was brought back to us as it needed a subdivision.
okay,
So, so in other words, the lot on which this site plan is being proposed is a proposed part of a subdivision.
Yes.
So without the subdivision, this lot can't simply by itself be developed.
Unless it just remained by itself and there wasn't an additional lot being cut from it.
So if it were the whole lot in its entirety,
Yeah,
we'd have a different conversation.
right.
I see, okay. Does that make sense? Okay. So, April 1st would be a target date, and if we can extend it if we need to? Is that how you want to do that? Okay.
would you mind giving me a list of items? I think I have most of them, but want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
Can you do your fancy screen share?
Sure.
And we can, I'll compare notes.
Just give me a second.
This is a little bit like Boggle. I gotta check off all the items that you have, all the words I check off. I got the same ones to see who has the most points at the end. So I agree, I do have a note here about the purchase and sale. It sounds like, Silas, you answered the question. I think it's just making sure we have a correct date, and I did see the extensions like you had mentioned, and good on Jim to really check on those dates. We'll just make sure we clarify that. We have the 188-802, understanding that section, clarity, and how that's met. Snow storage, I have that. We talked about additional buffering. The dome structure itself, that's a good question. Just to add on that, oh, I don't need to add on that. I think Camille, you're thinking the overall context. There's trees out there. They're fairly tall, and do they have a particular puncture resistance to it? I mean, I'm sure there's some level on it, but is that a common thing?
Yeah, I don't know off top. I'm not the designer of
Okay.
that, but we can certainly get some information for
Okay.
you.
Talked about the lighting, slope consideration, traffic, the TMP. Design standards, I think, for application completeness, I think you've provided sufficient information. I think we'll talk about it some more. I agree with Jim. I'm looking at how to apply that standard and understanding the uniqueness of the project. So I think what you've given us on that is satisfactory to move forward on that item, but just an item of note. Okay, those were all my notes as well. Anyone had any additional notes? No?
So for the traffic movement permit consideration, what would the board like to see so that the applicant knows going forward?
Well, I guess historically where we've historically been is if it's on the site plan, it gets included in the traffic movement permit. That being said, I think if the applicant, I guess I'm not personally 100% opposed to a condition if the condition is worded correctly and has the correct and proper intent. I don't know what that means right this second. I don't know what that means right this second, but I do have hesitation as far as the condition being the traffic movement permit, once received and complete and understood, you know, then we go along with the field for all the reasons Emily noted. There's a lot of risk for the city in there. So the condition could be different, of course. How? I don't know. But I appreciate the question, the time frame, the work. I understand it all. It just hasn't gone well for the city. So that being top priority, that's where I'm coming from, I guess. So, did that answer your question?
It sounds like the board wants to continue to review it. I just would like some clear direction for the applicant, only because of what we've had happen in the past. So it just would be nice to have clear, but maybe it's something that you want to talk about the next meeting.
Sure. So I guess on short order, the clear direction would be that everything's included. If it's shown on the application and we're looking to do it, it's all under one umbrella, unless the applicant has a different proposal. So I guess the proposal of, as it sits in the condition now, it didn't seem like we were very supportive of it. Does that help? Does that make sense? Is that clear to you at all?
I guess if I hear what you're saying, is that unless we have a traffic movement permit, we need to take the field off the plan. Is that what I'm hearing from you?
In simple terms, yep.
Okay. So the board will not consider a conditional approval of phase 2 upon receipt of the traffic movement permit?
I'm not sure the board would, but
Yeah. I'm thinking it's, you know, I certainly don't want us to be going back and forth from one application to another, you know, providing conditional approvals for some and not for others. And so if historically the city has not granted conditional approvals in those circumstances with traffic, you know, movement permits, I'd be inclined not to grant one here either.
so Emily, we've had instances where you have that soccer field's allocated, it's graded, there's future soccer field, you put in the parameters you need to build out that in a future phase. But does that satisfy, Emily, if there's, you know, potential future soccer field location? But that's how it's on the application. It would have to come back as an amendment to the application with the TMP sort of thing, opposed to it being on the drawings here and just phase 2 sort of thing. Is that a clear differentiation between the two?
Yeah, so what you made the hotel owner, what we made the hotel owner do was she had to take off the indoor water park that was shown on the plan set, but she built out most of the utilities in preparation of, in the future, I want to do this, and she informed the board that was her intention. So,
Sure.
like, there can be an area that gets stabilized, and, you know, like, if it has to be disturbed during construction, or the applicant can come back and get approval of an amendment, like we've done in the past, for other applications, when we don't have all the info for that second piece.
Sure, so the applicant has to come back, they must come back for an amendment. It's not just a condition of approval and they can proceed.
That's not how we've been doing it the last few times,
Okay, correct.
in the last two or 3 years.
Okay, correct. Does that help? Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, so with that, I think we've captured everything on this one this evening.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes, of course.
In terms of timing of getting the answer back on the, I guess from the town engineer about the 1.5 to 2 to 1 slope, because that has more implications, the whole project, than it sounds like it does, you know, because it does push us into the buffer and potentially more wetland impact, which affects our NERPA permit. So, you know, if there's a, is that something that we won't hear until next meeting, or is that something that the engineer will weigh in on relatively soon?
Yeah, so we can add clarity to that. So I think Emily can get that on short order. I think she can communicate to the city engineer that the board is in support of that waiver.
Okay.
Pending any input from them. So we don't want more impact to the wetland and in that setback. So I think she can communicate to them and make sure that that gets
Yeah.
to you in short order.
That would be great. I guess just the sooner we can hear, if we can hear back prior to the next meeting, that would really help us out with schedule.
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Whatever his response is.
Yep, okay.
And if that sewer connection is required as part of the subdivision, would that change your plans dramatically in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, it's not a huge change. It's a huge change from a cost perspective, so we'd have to talk through the client with that, you know, and understand what that means for the project. Could kill the project, I don't know.
Okay. So your research on that will be pretty important too.
Yes. Yep, we'll study the ordinance in respect to that and see what we can come up with.
So, Mr. Chair, a motion to continue the application completeness review until April 1st would be safe.
All right, thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce, thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion to continue application review to April 1st? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Great, thank you.
Thanks, folks, appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, can we take a short break before we can go to the next agenda item, please?
We can. We have two more items here, and we're getting close to our 9 o'clock, so as long as we're back here before 9 o'clock to continue, or make a decision to continue. All right, thank you everyone for that short recess. Before we begin our next item here, we're running close to our 9 o'clock deadline here, so if the board wishes to and is okay with it, we can motion to continue.
Mr. Chair, I move to continue our meeting tonight till 9:30.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any discussion on the motion to continue past our 9 o'clock deadline to 9:30? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, with that, our next item on our agenda this evening is Eastview Parkway. This is map 64, lot 6-2-2. And this is a site plan review for a 17,640 square foot, two-story office and storage flex space with associated site improvements. And this is in the Park North contract zone and Portland Road zoning districts, presented this evening by Saco Technics. Anything else to add, Emily?
I think we're pretty familiar with lots in the Eastview Parkway area. We did provide an application checklist. Certainly the board can decide if it wants to host a site walk. Last time we had a Waterfall Drive application, it decided it didn't, you decided you didn't need a site walk because you were familiar with the Park North properties. And then just, there were some comments by city engineering that will need to be addressed through the review process, and the landscaping peer review is underway. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Emily. Board members, any questions or comments for Emily at this time? Any disclosures or conflicts?
I did have one question, and maybe it's appropriate now for Emily. We had received correspondence about contract zones, indicating that in some folks' opinions, all contract zones in Saco are now voided. Can you address that?
Yeah, so, Mr. Chair, did you want me to address it?
Sure, please.
So the city staff is working on a pretty big contract zone project, working through all the contract zones in Saco. I don't want to go too far into it with this specific project. I realize this is part of a contract zone. The underlying zoning in Portland Road District does allow for contractors, tradespersons, permitted use as well. But basically, we'll be coming back to the board. The staff will shortly. We went to city council and explained how contract zones will be reviewed in Saco going forward based on some information we've received. And so contract zones will basically be put into, we're categorizing them now and analyzing them, and they'll be put into several different buckets, if you will, of legally non-conforming. So a contract zone was completed, the project was closed out, substantial construction has been met, so you can finish your work on the contract zone, and that's more of where I see this one falling into, this large contract zone. And then the others will be like the requirements haven't been met or the conditions haven't been met. And so we as staff are analyzing each contract zone, and then we'll be back in front of council. I told them within 2 months, that was back February 10th. And we do have some outreach to business owners to do, as well as back to the planning board once we're done with our analysis. As far as more info on this one, you're not doing anything for decisions tonight. It would just be looking at application completeness review. We will probably have our analysis done as we move forward. I assume that we're going to have it done in the next few weeks, but then we'll have to do some outreach as well. Does that help answer it, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we have the applicant with us this evening. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all as well for deciding to extend the time to hear us out this evening. My name is Matthew Orr. I'm a civil engineer with Saco Technics. Here on behalf of Bad Dog Properties LLC, who is the property owner which will be leasing the ultimate entity of the building for what's proposed in front of you to Main Contract Flooring. Main Contract Flooring, as a little background, they currently operate out of a facility in Westbrook and have outgrown their operations there and are looking to locate to a new headquarters and facility. So they have chosen Lot 2 in Eastview Parkway, which is what is in front of you this evening. The particular building that we're proposing, as mentioned, is located within the overall Park North and the Cascades subdivision. This building is about 400 feet east of Route 1 along Eastview Parkway, the south side of Eastview Parkway. All the proposed actual structure footprint is 14,800 square feet, but with the upstairs spaces, it does get to that 17,000 number that was being mentioned. There is a single access as proposed currently from Eastview Parkway, and also the parking on the site is associated for both employees, their company vehicles, as well as delivery trucks for their product that they will store on site. The project will be served by public utilities within Eastview Parkway. That's underground power, water, sewer, as well as some storm drain capacity within the actual street. For stormwater treatment and detention, there are drip edges around the building for conveyance of the stormwater. Ultimately, it does go towards a already constructed stormwater wet pond near the intersection of Don Marie and Eastview Parkway, which was developed as part of the subdivision. So all the flows will be heading that direction for ultimate treatment and detention as part of this project. I think also to mention, with this being a part of the overall subdivision, I know a few other projects have been in front of you all over the last couple months. There was a traffic memo that was done up late last year, which incorporated pending projects within the city, as well as those that were in front of you at that time, concerning the remaining trips within the traffic movement permit for the subdivision. This project was included within that list, so it is captured by everything there as far as any permits that would be needed on the state level. Other than that, I believe that is all I have to share this evening. If you have any other further questions on operations or anything, the applicant is here to speak on those matters.
Sorry, thank you. Board members, any questions or comments for the applicant at this time? Jim, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt, one of the first questions I had had to do with the purchase and sale contract. I was trying to look at when that expired, and it wasn't clear to me if it's still in effect, or if there were extensions granted. It seemed like it was first signed in September of last year.
I believe that has been closed at this time, so it's no longer a purchase and sale. They've actually closed on the property.
Oh, okay. All right, so they're the owners of the property. That's
Correct.
great. And you're not asking for any waivers here? I didn't see any.
No, not at this time.
Those are the only questions I had for Matt. But, Mr. Chair, I'll just say it looks like all of the boxes were checked for the, the city engineer has some issues that will need to be addressed. But it seems like those aren't necessarily tied to application completeness. So I'd be inclined, after the rest of the board has commented, to move to find the application complete.
All right, thank you, Jim. Any other thoughts or questions from board members?
Well
I,
then.
I agree with Jim. I think it looks pretty good. I have site plan related questions, but none pertaining right now to the application itself.
Well then, Mr. Chair, I'll move that we find the application complete.
I will second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the motion? All right, those in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Carrie Lynn,
Yes?
Joyce,
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
And Mr. Chair, I'll move that we schedule a public hearing for April 1st. I'm trying to gauge the look of the city planner to see if that's a good date. She's about to tell us.
So Lisa tells me this should be April 18th based on all the other 15th, but based on everything else on April 1st. I'm not sure if the applicant's okay with that. But
Yeah, I think so.
All right, then April 18th.
If we can be first on the agenda.
April 18th.
15th.
15th, I'm sorry.
15th, I'm sorry.
That's why I say it out loud.
Maybe you won't be last.
April 15th.
Right.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I second.
Second by Carrie Lynn. Thank you. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim,
Yes.
Carrie Lynn,
Yes?
Joyce,
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Site walk, you mentioned it. Do the board members feel like they want to do a site walk, need to do a site walk on this property? I know a lot of us have been out there quite a bit, but
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been out there enough, and it looks pretty flat, and so I don't think we need a site walk, but
I know Camille's the newest member on the board. She hasn't been out there, but
It's very visible.
okay. So no site walk, and all right. I think that's everything. Yes, Emily? Yeah. All right. Thank you, and we'll see you on the 15th.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for staying late with us.
Of course.
Emily, question? If something gets bumped off the first, can we put them on?
yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is the board okay with that if we move it to the 1st, if scheduling allows?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't see.
I think we should know in the next few days.
Yeah,
You're on the call list.
You're alluding to if an application that's scheduled for the 1st hasn't quite completed their materials that we're looking for, and they need a table to the next meeting, then we can swap. Absolutely.
Yeah, if we can make the notice periods, because sometimes we won't know until a few days, someone might request tabling 5 days before. Well, we won't make the notice period. But if we find out, and I coordinate this in the next few days with Lisa, and someone drops, we can move them to April 1st.
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item on the agenda this evening is Waterfall Drive. This is the 195 residential dwelling unit application with associated site improvements. And this one, the applicant, excuse me, has requested that we table to the April 1st meeting.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I'm going to make my first motion of my time on this board. I will make a motion to table G, Waterfall Drive Residential Development, map 63, lot 6, proposal for 195 residential dwelling units with associated site improvements for Park North Development, LLC and Saco Yep, I'm there with you. Sevago Technics.
Excellent, thank you, Carolyn.
Should say April 1st.
So motion made and seconded to table application for Waterfall Drive to April 1st. Any additional discussion?
Do we have room on April 1st? Is this one of the items that was already on that?
Yeah, I
List.
bumped this over as one of the top items.
Great, those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Camille?
Yes.
How about yes as well? Motion passes 5-0. And moving along, any general correspondences this evening, Emily?
Well, you got your after the fact packet, so there was something in there, which I guess could be considered general correspondence, but it was given to you in the after the fact packet, so that's where it is.
Great, thank you. Any planning department updates or discussions?
I will give you my updates on March 18th. I'm sure I'll have a list by then.
Okay, great, thank you. And board members, any comments, questions, concerns?
Question. Am I allowed, because I don't know this, are we allowed to discuss at this point the emails that came from, and I can't pronounce their names like you did, Fitanides? I'm going to botch this. Yeah, that. Fitanides? The campground beside the dome, or can we not discuss that?
So I would say no to a specific application, but for example, some of our general correspondences, correct me if I'm wrong, of course, the correspondence is not specific to a project, so the contract zones, for example, those we could discuss, but not a specific application, because the applicant and the public's not here to hear that discussion. Yes?
It's also something that if you have a concern that you want staff to follow up, like I wasn't at the site walk, so I don't know if this is like, oh, there's something concerning out, oh yeah, okay. There was something concerning out there that needs to be followed up on, you can send that to me, I can help follow up on it, but.
I won't voice my opinion right now then.
Well, when we're,
I'm just concerned about their impact.
sure, and go ahead and when we're talking about it, throw it out there. Don't be shy.
It's so cute. I lost my thought.
That's okay. So, yes, we could talk about general correspondences, just not application specific. Okay. Any other board member thoughts?
And I would just say about that particular topic that, you know, the general correspondence we received, it's really a legal question that we can't do anything about anyway. So it's interesting to us to read, but it's like nothing we need to deal with.
Yep. As far as specific contract zones and, yeah, we are not the governing body on contract zones and that decision. That's, we leave that up to our fearless council leaders to do that, so. So, it's good that Emily keeps us abreast of all these items and questions and concerns, and we will implement and address as we need to necessary. Excuse me. All right. With that, we will adjourn at 9:16 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for staying a few minutes late.
Thanks for having us.